The stars seemed to hold their breath as two of the galaxy's most powerful forces prepared to collide. On one side, the Vanguard, Earth's battleship, silent and deadly, its crew calm and determined. On the other, Therak's fleet, a mighty armada of sleek warships, hidden in the vastness of space, ready to strike with ruthless efficiency. Captain Alaric stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, his gaze locked on the view ahead. The crew around him was focused, their expressions a mix of calm and resolve. They had faced enemies before, but this was different. Therak wasn't just an enemy. He was the embodiment of everything that the Vanguard stood against. Power built on fear, on domination. "We have to show them who we are," Alaric said, his voice steady. "We fight not for power, but for peace. But if they attack, we defend with everything we have." The crew nodded in agreement. They understood their captain's words. Earth wasn't here to conquer, but it would not back down. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. Therak's fleet moved quickly, their cloaking devices making them almost invisible. For a moment, it seemed like the Vanguard might be caught off guard. But then, the sensors on the Vanguard came to life, flashing with the telltale signs of the enemy fleet. The cloaking didn't fool them. "Enemy fleet detected," Lieutenant Marcus called out from his station. 16 warships, closing fast." "They're not wasting time," Alaric replied, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Weapons online." As the fleet grew closer, Therak's ships uncloaked and their weapons powered up. The Vanguard remained still, its massive guns trained on the approaching fleet. But the crew was ready for what was coming. Suddenly, the enemy opened fire. Bright beams of energy shot out, targeting the Vanguard from every angle. The Vanguard's shields flared as the blasts hit, but they held strong. Therak's fleet had underestimated the Vanguard's defenses. "Return fire," Alaric ordered. The Vanguard's weapon systems hummed to life, and the massive ship unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The first shot struck a warship in Therak's fleet, tearing through its hull with ease. The enemy ship exploded in a blinding flash, and its debris scattered in every direction. "Good shot, Captain," Alina, the second in command, said, her voice tight with focus. But Therak wasn't backing down. His fleet retaliated with everything they had, launching missiles and energy blasts, trying to overwhelm the Vanguard's shields. Another ship fired, and this time, the Vanguard dodged, its engines roaring to life as the ship made a sharp turn, avoiding the attack. "We're outgunned, but not outmatched," Alaric muttered, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Keep their focus on us. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." Therak's warships swarmed around the Vanguard, but the Vanguard fought back fiercely. Every shot, every maneuver, every second of the battle was a testament to the skill and unity of the human crew. The Vanguard may have been outnumbered, but it wasn't helpless. Therak's ships began to fall one by one, torn apart by the Vanguard's devastating firepower. But Therak wasn't one to give up so easily. As his fleet dwindled, he ordered his most elite ship, the Bloodstorm, to engage directly with the Vanguard. The Bloodstorm was massive, its dark hull lined with weapons and armor. It bore down on the Vanguard, its engines blazing with power. The final showdown was about to begin. Alaric stared at the oncoming ship, knowing this was the moment that would determine everything. The Vanguard had held its ground so far, but this would be the true test. Would the human ship be able to withstand the full might of Therak's flagship? "Ready all weapons," Alaric said, his voice calm. "We're not backing down." As the Bloodstorm closed in, the Vanguard's massive guns fired, the energy beams bright enough to light up the void of space. The two ships clashed in a brilliant explosion of light, their weapons creating a shockwave that rocked the surrounding stars. For a moment, there was silence. And then, the Bloodstorm exploded. The battle was over. Therak's fleet had been defeated, and the Vanguard stood victorious. But the cost of victory was not lost on Alaric. The fight had been hard, and there was no guarantee that the galaxy's conflicts were over. As the crew of the Vanguard surveyed the wreckage of the battlefield, they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, and it was only a matter of time before they would see what the Vanguard could do next. The galaxy was in chaos. Wars raged across countless star systems, and the galaxy's most powerful factions, like the Federation, held dominion over most of it. These factions, each more advanced than the last, ruled through fear and strength, dominating any who dared to oppose them. It was a time when the idea of new players entering the field seemed impossible. But they were wrong. In the distance, a strange blip appeared on the Federation's radar, something they had never seen before. It was unlike any ship they knew, and it didn't belong to any of the known species in the galaxy. The signal was faint, weak, but unmistakable. For a moment, the officers laughed it off, dismissing it as some kind of anomaly, a glitch in the system. They had seen nothing that could challenge the Federation's might. However, as the blip drew closer, a deep unease settled across the command deck of the Federation's flagship. This wasn't just any anomaly, it was a ship, and it was headed straight toward them. Its size was impossible to estimate, and there was no identification signal. The Federation sent out a fleet of scouts to investigate, assuming the ship was harmless. But as soon as they moved closer, they saw the truth. This ship wasn't like anything the Federation had encountered. It wasn't sleek and smooth, like the ships they were used to. No, this ship looked rough around the edges, almost primitive in its design. Yet there was something undeniably powerful about it. The scouts circled the ship, transmitting their findings back to Federation headquarters. Their sensors were failing. The ship's technology was too advanced, too foreign. They couldn't make sense of it. And then, without warning, the U.S. Vanguard fired. The first shot was nothing more than a beam of light, but it hit with the force of a supernova. One of the scout ships was torn apart in an instant, its debris scattering across space. The Federation fleet was stunned into silence. They had never seen such destructive power before. The Vanguard's energy shields absorbed the full impact, and the ship itself remained untouched. Immediately, a panic spread through the Federation fleet. They tried to communicate with the mysterious ship, but it was no use. The Vanguard wasn't responding. Another shot was fired, this time aimed directly at a larger cruiser in the Federation's fleet. It was disintegrated in seconds. On every Federation command ship, leaders scrambled to make sense of what was happening. They had no answers, only the growing realization that they had severely underestimated the new threat. The Federation's arrogance was coming back to haunt them. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. A new power had arrived. A power unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Earth's battleship, the U.S. Vanguard, had come to show the galaxy what true strength looked like. Fear began to take root in the hearts of the galaxy's rulers. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? And most importantly, what did they want? But the answer to those questions was simple. They wanted the galaxy to know one thing: humans would not be ignored. Across the galaxy, the news of the Vanguard's devastating power was met with a mixture of fear, confusion, and curiosity. What had started as a mysterious, seemingly insignificant ship had now become the talk of every planet, every faction, and every star system. The Federation was in shock, but they weren't the only ones. The once proud empire, with its grip on the galaxy, was now facing an unexpected enemy, a species they knew nothing about. And yet this unknown force had just wiped out a fleet without hesitation. To many, this was a warning. To others, it was a call to arms. On distant planets, the leaders of powerful factions began to discuss the Vanguard. Some of them, particularly those who had long been enemies of the Federation, saw this as an opportunity. The arrival of Earth's battleship could be the end of the Federation's dominance. Perhaps it was time to form new alliances. Others, however, feared that Earth's power would turn them into the next target of destruction. On the planet Orcs, a neutral world, Leaders gathered to form a council to discuss the Vanguard's potential threat. The room was filled with representatives from various factions, including trade guilds, military powers, and scientific councils. Their mission was simple: decide what to do about Earth and the mysterious ship that had shattered the peace. "The humans are unpredictable," said a representative from the Tyran Empire, a race known for their cold logic and advanced technology. "Their ship destroyed an entire fleet with no warning. How do we even begin to understand their motivations?" "The question is not their motivations," replied a tall, imposing figure from the Tarquin Dominion, his voice deep and steady. "The question is, what will they do next? If they choose to attack, how do we defend ourselves?" The room fell silent, each representative feeling the weight of the situation. The Federation had been their greatest enemy for years, but now, a new power had entered the fray, one that could turn the galaxy upside down. Meanwhile, on the Vanguard, Captain Alaric stared out into space. The Vanguard had not moved for days, its crew still as calm as ever. They had destroyed the Federation's envoy ship, but there was no sense of triumph. Earth's power was not something to be celebrated. It was a responsibility, and one that Alaric understood all too well. "We've sent our message," Captain Alaric said to his crew. "Now we wait. The galaxy will come to us, whether it's for peace or war. Let them decide." Though the crew was filled with uncertainty, they knew their captain's words held weight. They were humanity's first step onto the galactic stage, and how they acted now would shape Earth's future in the universe. Back on Eryx, leaders began to take sides. Some factions feared Earth's power and decided to unite with the Federation, hoping to stand together against this new threat. Others saw the Vanguard as a chance to topple the old order and secure a place in the galaxy's new hierarchy. But no one was willing to stand alone. The galaxy had never faced such a dilemma. Earth was a force unlike any other, and its actions would ripple across every star system. The question was no longer whether the Vanguard would destroy more fleets. It was whether Earth would use its power to dominate or to forge new alliances. And for the first time, the galaxy was left with a terrifying truth. Humanity had arrived, and it wasn't going anywhere. In this part, the fear and uncertainty spread throughout the galaxy as different factions react to the Vanguard's overwhelming power. While some see it as an opportunity to join forces, others fear it might be the end of their dominance. The galaxy is now divided, and Earth's presence is no longer something they can ignore. In the far reaches of the galaxy, where even the Federation's mighty fleets dared not tread, a figure watched the Vanguard's rise with growing interest. This was a man who was known across many star systems: Therak, the warlord of Andrax. His reputation was built on countless victories, his ruthless tactics, and his complete disregard for mercy. No empire, no species had ever challenged his dominance, until now. Therak had heard of the humans, of course. Who hadn't? But he had never taken them seriously, a species that had only recently gained spacefaring technology, a race with no great galactic history. It was laughable to think they could pose a threat to him, but the destruction of the Federation fleet had forced him to reconsider. His warships were scattered across the outer edges of Andrax space, ready to be called into action at a moment's notice. Therak's first instinct was to crush the Vanguard, to show the humans their place. But he knew he could not be reckless. The Vanguard's technology was unlike anything he had ever seen. He had to approach this carefully. For the first time in years, Therak felt uncertainty, and that made him dangerous. From his command center on the warship Bloodstorm, he issued orders to his elite forces. He called for a fleet, one unlike any other he had assembled. This time, he would not just send a handful of ships. He would send everything. Every weapon, every soldier, every ship, all focused on one target: Earth. As his fleet gathered, Therak prepared his forces for battle. He knew the Vanguard was powerful, but he also knew the element of surprise was his greatest weapon. His ships were faster, more agile, and capable of cloaking their presence, making them nearly impossible to detect. His strategy was simple: Strike quickly and decisively before the humans could react. But as the fleet prepared to leave, one of Therak's most trusted commanders, General Kor, approached him with caution in his voice. "Warlord, are you sure this is wise?" Kor asked. "The humans destroyed an entire fleet with ease. If we engage them directly, we could be obliterated." Therak's cold eyes turned toward him, his gaze unwavering. "If we do nothing, we risk more than destruction. We risk being seen as weak. The galaxy cannot know that we fear the humans. We will strike them down before they can become a true threat." Kor hesitated, but the warlord's words carried the weight of his reputation. "As you command, warlord." Therak's fleet, now fully assembled, made its way toward the vanguard. But he did not want to send just any fleet. He sent his most elite soldiers, warriors who had been trained for years in the harshest conditions. These soldiers were prepared for the worst, and Therak knew they would fight with the same ruthless determination he did. Meanwhile, on the vanguard, Captain Alaric watched the growing movement of ships on his radar. It didn't take long for the humans to realize what was happening. The warlord of Andrax had mobilized his forces, and they were headed straight for the vanguard. Alaric stood on the bridge, the faint hum of the ship's engines in the background. "Prepare for battle," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But remember, we are not here to destroy anyone without reason. We defend ourselves, but we don't start wars." His crew was ready. They had seen the power of the vanguard, and they knew what it could do. But this battle would be different. Therak was not just an enemy. He was a symbol of the galaxy's old way of thinking, the way that believed power could only be held through domination and fear. As the vanguard faced Therak's fleet, the tension in the air was palpable. It was no longer just a battle of weapons. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had just stepped into the center of that change. The galaxy was gripped in fear as the U.S. vanguard continued its silent advance through the stars. News of its destructive power spread quickly, and soon, every major faction in the galaxy was whispering about the strange new ship that had emerged from the unknown depths of space. No one knew who or what the humans were, but they knew one thing for sure. Their ship was unlike anything they had ever encountered. For the Federation, the situation had gone from bad to worse. Their first fleet, which had been sent to deal with the vanguard, was now nothing more than space debris, destroyed in an instant by the ship's powerful weapons. Despite the sudden attack, the vanguard remained silent, offering no explanation, no demands, just the terrifying proof of its strength. In a desperate attempt to understand the situation, the Federation ordered its most advanced warships to engage the vanguard. They gathered their largest fleet, including their flagship, the Emperor's Might, a massive ship that was considered the most powerful in the galaxy. The Federation's best officers and tacticians were on board, ready to confront whatever this mysterious ship could throw at them. The Emperor's Might moved forward cautiously, its weapon systems primed. The fleet watched, waiting for the signal to attack. However, the vanguard made no move. Its lights were dim, and its hull barely reflected the distant stars. It looked almost vulnerable. The Federation fleet hesitated. What was the vanguard waiting for? Was it a trap? Would the humans strike first again? And if they did, how could they possibly defend themselves? Before anyone could make a decision, the vanguard unleashed its fury. A sudden burst of energy surged from the ship, striking the Emperor's Might directly. The Federation flagship shook violently as the massive blast slammed into its shields, overwhelming them in seconds. The ship's outer armor began to crack, its engines sputtering as the power began to fail. It was clear now that the humans didn't just have advanced weapons. They had weapons that could break through the most advanced shields in the galaxy. Full retreat. The order was shouted across the fleet, but it was too late. Another beam fired, this time targeting the entire fleet. It tore through multiple warships at once, slicing through their hulls like a hot knife through butter. The shockwave sent debris flying across the void, and in a matter of moments, What had been a proud fleet was nothing more than a cloud of wreckage. Back on the Vanguard, the crew remained calm. They didn't cheer or celebrate. They didn't even speak much. They knew their power, and they knew how to wield it. But they also knew the battle was not yet over. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, panic began to spread. What was happening? How had Earth, this previously unknown species, created such a powerful ship? Who were they to challenge the Federation? But the captain of the Vanguard, standing on the bridge of his ship, simply stared out into the stars. He knew what was coming. The Vanguard was just the beginning. Earth had arrived. And it wasn't leaving until the galaxy understood one important fact. Humans didn't negotiate. They dominated. This part further establishes the terrifying power of the Vanguard, showcasing how its technology can destroy even the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. The mystery surrounding Earth deepens, and the galaxy begins to realize that they've underestimated humanity's potential. The Vanguard moved through space, its engines humming steadily as it headed toward the unknown anomaly on the edge of the galaxy. The crew had spent the past hours preparing for whatever lay ahead, their minds filled with questions. What kind of enemy could be older than the Federation? Who had sent the cryptic warning? And what was this mysterious force that was watching them from the shadows? Captain Alaric stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was calm, but his thoughts raced. The galaxy had just witnessed Earth's power, and yet now they were facing something far more dangerous. He had always known that humanity's emergence would shake things up, but he never expected something like this. An ancient force that had been hidden for centuries, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," Marcus, the ship's communications officer, called out. "We're picking up strange readings. It's difficult to interpret." Alaric stepped forward, his eyes scanning the view screen. Ahead, the stars seemed to warp, as though the very fabric of space itself was bending. The anomaly was not just a physical object. It was something far more complex, something that didn't belong. "We're close," Alaric said, his voice steady. "Prepare for anything." As the Vanguard moved closer to the anomaly, a low hum filled the air, emanating from deep within the ship. The artificial intelligence systems began to alert the crew of unusual readings: energy spikes, gravity fluctuations, and strange electromagnetic waves. The ship's advanced sensors couldn't make sense of the data. It was as though the laws of physics were being twisted, and the Vanguard was on the edge of something far beyond human understanding. "Captain, I'm seeing something," Elena, the second in command, called out. "There's a structure. It's massive. It's not natural. It looks like some sort of ancient installation. But how could it be so advanced?" Alaric's heart skipped a beat. The message, the warning, was this the source of it all? Was this what the mysterious figure had been speaking about? "Lock onto that structure," Alaric ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As the Vanguard drew closer, the structure became clearer. It was a colossal ring-shaped structure, suspended in space, its surface covered in symbols and markings that no one could recognize. It seemed to pulse with a strange energy, an aura that felt both ancient and alive. This wasn't a structure built by any known race. This was something different, something older. "We've arrived," Marcus said quietly. "This is it, the source of the disturbance." Suddenly, a voice boomed across the bridge, not from any speaker, but directly into their minds. It was a voice filled with power, cold and ancient, and it sent a chill down every crew member's spine. "Humans," the voice said, "you have crossed into a realm beyond your understanding. You have awakened us, and now you must choose. Will you bow to the old ways, or will you fight to survive?" Alaric felt the weight of the words. The choice was clear: submit to this ancient force or resist, knowing the consequences could be catastrophic. "Captain," Elena said, her voice tense, "what do we do?" Alaric took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew the Vanguard, and its crew had already proven they could survive and even thrive against the galaxy's greatest powers. But this was different. This was not just a battle for power. It was a battle for humanity's very place in the universe. "We choose to fight," Alaric said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. "We fought for survival before, and we will fight again. We will not bow to anyone, not now, not ever." The voice in their minds seemed to grow darker, its power intensifying. "Then prepare to face the consequences, human." Before anyone could react, the structure before them began to glow with a blinding light. The Vanguard sensors went haywire, and the very space around them seemed to crack and distort. Alaric knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just about their ship. This was about humanity's future. The Vanguard readied itself for whatever was coming, its weapons powering up and shields strengthening. The battle for survival, for Earth's place in the galaxy, was about to begin. The galaxy was in chaos. The Federation had been shaken to its core, and now, with the Vanguard silently floating in space, the rest of the galaxy was forced to reckon with the reality of Earth's power. The Vanguard had proven itself a weapon of unimaginable force, but the people behind it were a mystery. Who were these humans, and what did they want? Inside the Vanguard, life continued with eerie calm. The crew, composed entirely of humans, worked like clockwork. The captain, Alaric, stood on the bridge, gazing out into the vastness of space. His face was solemn, but his eyes were focused, understanding the weight of their position. Earth had arrived, and now, humanity had to decide how to use its newfound power. The Vanguard was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, resilience, and the will to survive. Alaric had seen the worst of humanity's history, from wars and disasters to moments of great triumph. But this was different. They were no longer just fighting for survival on their homeworld. They were fighting for a place in the universe, and their victory over the Federation had proven that humans could not be ignored. "We're not here to conquer," Alaric said quietly to his second-in-command, Sergeant Alina. She stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "But we will never be bullied again." Alina nodded, her eyes hard with resolve. "We've shown them our strength. Now we need to show them what we're really capable of." The Vanguard's crew wasn't just military. They were scientists, engineers, doctors, and civilians who had come together to protect Earth and its future. Their unity was something the galaxy's other factions didn't understand. Unlike the divided empires that tore each other apart, humanity had learned to come together when needed. This unity was their greatest strength. In the control room, Lieutenant Marcus was working on the ship's AI systems, fine-tuning its algorithms. The ship's artificial intelligence was a marvel, designed to be more than just a tool of war. It was a living, breathing entity that could think, learn, and adapt. It had saved them countless times in their journey, guiding the Vanguard through battle with precision and accuracy. "Captain, the galactic communication systems are lighting up," Marcus reported. "There's an urgent message coming through from the planet Scifi. It looks like they're ready to talk." Alaric turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "Put it through." A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It was the leader of Scifi, a tall, dignified alien with silver skin and glowing eyes. "Human," the leader said, his voice calm but filled with suspicion. "We wish to speak with you. You have destroyed the Federation's fleet, and now we must know. What is your plan?" The galaxy had heard the message loud and clear. Earth was a power to be reckoned with. The Zenthans, like many others, had been forced into a difficult decision. Would they ally with Earth, hoping to survive whatever storm was coming? Or would they oppose the Vanguard and risk everything? Alaric stood tall, his voice steady and clear as he spoke. "We are not here to destroy you, but we will not stand by and let the galaxy tear itself apart. If you want peace, we can talk. If you want war, we will be ready." There was a long pause. The Zenthans exchanged uncertain glances, clearly intimidated by the power on display. "We will consider your words," the Zenth leader said, Before the hologram flickered out, Alaric turned back to his crew, his expression determined. The message has been sent. Now, we wait. As the Vanguard drifted silently in space, the galaxy watched. The humans had made their intentions clear. They weren't here to conquer, but they would not be weak either. The power of humanity was not just in their weapons, but in their strength to unite, to adapt, and to rise above. And as the stars flickered in the distance, the Vanguard moved onward, leaving the galaxy to wonder, what would humanity do next? The silence that followed the destruction of Theric's fleet was only temporary. Though the Vanguard stood victorious, the galaxy was far from calm. The massive ship, now a symbol of Earth's power, hovered in space, awaiting whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. Captain Alaric stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the stars outside. The crew, though battle-weary, was focused. They had won their first true test, but Alaric knew this wasn't the end. The Vanguard had made waves, and with that attention came threats from unexpected corners. "Captain, we're receiving a new transmission," Marcus called from his console. His voice was tight with urgency. "This one isn't from any known faction. It's encrypted." Alaric's brow furrowed. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flickered, and a new image appeared. It wasn't the face of any alien leader they recognized. The figure on the screen was cloaked in shadow, a dark outline that gave no hint of species or intent. "You've made a powerful enemy," the figure's voice echoed, low and menacing. "The Federation was nothing compared to what is coming for you." Alaric stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, it spoke with a chilling calmness, as if it were toying with them. "We are the Forgotten. We were once the rulers of this galaxy, before the Federation, before the warlords. You have no idea what you've unleashed. But now, we are awake, and we will end your kind before you can grow too strong." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only static behind. For a moment, the bridge was silent. Alaric turned to face his crew. "Did anyone recognize that voice?" he asked. No one spoke. They all felt the same sense of unease. The Federation, Theric, and other known enemies had been powerful, but this was different. An unknown enemy who claimed to be older than the Federation itself. The words sent a chill down their spines. "Keep the scanners active," Alaric ordered. "I don't like this." The crew of the Vanguard quickly set to work, trying to track any signs of this new threat. But as the hours passed, there were no more transmissions, no more clues. The mystery deepened, and the weight of uncertainty settled over them all. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the implications of the Vanguard's rise were still being felt. Several factions, both large and small, began to gather information, trying to figure out what kind of force Earth had truly become. They had all seen the destruction of Theric's fleet. They had all seen the human ship's power. But none of them had expected an ancient enemy to make itself known so quickly. "Captain, we found something." Marcus spoke up again, his voice now edged with concern. "An anomaly. Something. Ancient. It's located near the outer rim, far from our current position. But the readings are unlike anything we've seen before." Alaric's heart sank. "Is it a threat?" "It could be. It's difficult to say," Marcus replied. "But we need to investigate." Alaric stared at the screen. They had faced one enemy, and now another was waiting in the shadows. This wasn't just a fight for Earth's place in the galaxy anymore. There was something deeper at play, something far older, more powerful, and more dangerous than they could have imagined. "We'll go," Alaric decided. "Prepare the ship. We're going to find out who, or what, is behind this threat." As the crew prepared for the unknown, the Vanguard began its journey toward the distant anomaly. In the quiet darkness of space, something ancient and dangerous was watching, waiting for the humans to make their move. The stars seemed to shimmer more brightly in the wake of the battle. The Vanguard floated calmly in the aftermath of the destruction, its hull battered but still intact. The silence that followed the clash with Theric's fleet was deafening, as though the galaxy itself had taken a breath. Unsure of what would come next, Captain Alaric stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the wreckage of Theric's fleet scattered across space. The battle had been fierce, but humanity had proven something important that day. They weren't just a species to be ignored or dismissed. The Vanguard had sent a clear message. Earth was a power to be reckoned with. "We did it," Alina said quietly, standing beside him. "We defeated Theric." Alaric nodded but didn't reply. His mind was focused on the bigger picture. They had defeated a powerful warlord and his fleet, but that didn't mean the galaxy would suddenly bow to Earth's might. In fact, it might do the opposite. The galaxy's factions would soon rally together, either to challenge humanity or to try and use them for their own ends. The question remained, what would humanity's role be in this vast, chaotic universe? Captain Marcus, the ship's communications officer, spoke up from his station. "We're receiving multiple messages from other systems. It's overwhelming. The galaxy is in shock." Alaric turned to face Marcus, his brow furrowed. "What are they saying?" "Some are requesting peace talks. Others want to form alliances," Marcus replied, his fingers tapping rapidly over the console. "And there are others. They want to challenge us, to prove that the humans can be defeated." Alaric's lips tightened. "We knew this day would come. The galaxy isn't going to sit back and let us take control." The Vanguard's victory over Theric was only the beginning. It had proven that humanity could fight back, that they were capable of defending themselves and their future. But now, the real test would begin. The galaxy had seen the power of Earth, and it would either seek to unite with them or try to tear them down. Elena turned toward him, her eyes sharp with determination. "What should we do now, Captain?" Alaric paused, his gaze shifting to the view screen. In the distance, countless ships from various systems began to emerge, some cautious, some eager, and others with hostile intentions. It was clear that the battle for the galaxy's future wasn't over. It had only just begun. "We prepare," Alaric said, his voice low but strong. "We show the galaxy that we're not just here to take control. We're here to make sure humanity survives, to give the galaxy a future where power is not wielded by fear. But if they threaten us, if they try to destroy what we've built, we will defend ourselves, and we will fight until the end." The crew of the Vanguard gathered around, each one nodding in agreement. There was no doubt now. Humanity was not just a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were a force to be reckoned with. Whether the galaxy welcomed them or not, humanity would forge its path. The Vanguard slowly turned toward the approaching ships, its engines humming with power. Earth had just made its first real mark on the galaxy, and now the galaxy would have to decide. Would they accept humanity's vision, or would they try to break them down? One thing was certain. No one would ever forget the name Earth again. The aftermath of the Vanguard's attack sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Federation's military leadership was in a state of utter disbelief. Never had they faced such a force, one so unexpected and so devastating. The once invincible Federation fleet had been obliterated in a matter of hours. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. In the heart of the Federation's command center, Admiral Kalen sat with his officers, trying to make sense of the disaster. His brow was furrowed, and his eyes were clouded with concern. The Vanguard had destroyed their most advanced warships with ease, and they knew nothing about the humans who controlled it. "How do we respond?" one of his officers asked, her voice filled with panic. Kalon took a deep breath, considering his options. The galaxy was vast, and while the Federation had its fair share of enemies, none had been so powerful or so unknown as the humans. He needed information, and fast. "Send a diplomatic envoy," Kalon said, his voice steady. "We need to understand who they are, what they want, and why they've come. We cannot afford to keep fighting blindly." a fleet of Federation ships was dispatched, headed toward the vanguard. Their mission was clear: negotiate with the humans, find out what they wanted, and hopefully avoid further destruction. But the vanguard did not respond to their signals. It remained silent, almost eerie, as it drifted through space, seemingly unaware of the growing fear around it. The Federation ships reached the outskirts of the vanguard's territory, cautiously approaching, their weapons still powered down. The Federation's envoy ship was a magnificent sight, a symbol of peace and authority. It carried the hopes of the galaxy's most powerful empire. As it neared the vanguard, the Federation's captain, known for his calm demeanor, tried to reach out once more. "We come in peace," he transmitted, hoping for a reply. "We wish to speak with your leaders. We wish to understand your intentions." But there was no reply. Suddenly, the vanguard's weapons came to life. A single pulse of energy shot out, faster than light, slamming into the Federation envoy ship. The blast was so powerful that the entire ship was torn apart instantly, vanishing into nothing but vaporized debris. The crew of the vanguard did not flinch. There were no cheers, no celebrations, just cold, calculated efficiency. They had delivered a message, and it had been received loud and clear. The Federation was now faced with a dilemma. They could no longer ignore the humans. They had seen their power, and they knew they were not dealing with a minor threat. The humans, it seemed, were ready to destroy anyone who stood in their way. Back at the Federation's command center, Admiral Kalen sat in silence. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he processed the attack. What was Earth's plan? Were they interested in conquering the galaxy, or had they simply come to prove a point? The answers were elusive, but one thing was clear: Earth's arrival would change everything.